Chapter 6 of Midnight. This recording is in the public domain. Recording by Roger Moline. Midnight by Octavius Roy Cohen. Chapter 6. Regarding Roland Warren. For a long time after Evelyn departed, Carroll remained seated, puffing amusedly on the cigar which followed his matutinal cigarette. Time had been long since the detective had come in contact with so much youthful spontaneity, and he found the experience refreshing. Then he rose and would have left the apartment for headquarters, but again Freda announced a caller. "Another young lady?" questioned Carroll. "No, sir. It bane young feller." "Show him in." The visitor entered, and Carroll found himself gazing into the level eyes of a slightly disheveled and obviously excited young man of about 28 years of age. The man was slight of stature, but every nervous gesture bespoke wiriness. "Are you Mr. Carroll?" "Yes." "I'm Gresham, Garrison Gresham." "Ah! Won't you be seated?" "Yes, I came to have a talk with you." Carroll seated himself opposite his caller. Then he nodded. "You came to see me?" "About the Warren case." "You know something about it?" "Yes." The young man seemed to bite the word. "I do." "What?" "You're in charge of the case, aren't you?" "Yes." "You've seen this morning's papers?" "I have." "Well, they're rotten, absolutely rotten. They don't say it in so many words, but the impression they create is that my sister, Hazel, was the woman in the taxi who killed Roland Warren. It's a damned lie." The young man was growing more excited. Carroll put out a restraining hand. "I quite agree with you, my friend. It was a pretty rotten impression to create. But I shall see that all doubt is removed from the mind of the public when this afternoon's papers appear. I have just learned that your sister has an ironclad alibi." "You have already learned that?" "Yes." Gresham leaned forward eagerly. "What makes you sure that she did not was not?" "Suppose I question you, if you have no objections." "Fire away." "Where was your sister at midnight last night?" "At home." "Alone? I mean, was anyone besides your family there?" "Yes," replied Gresham, showing surprise at Carroll's evident knowledge of facts. "Who?" "Evelyn Rogers spent the night with her. Evelyn's a 17-year-old kid who has had what I believe you call a crush on my sister. They were together in that house from 10 o'clock last night, or earlier, until this morning. And if you don't believe that—" "But I do. I have just had a visit from Miss Rogers, and she told me exactly what you have just repeated. So I'm pretty well satisfied that your sister had nothing whatever to do with the affair. I will take pains to see that this evening's papers make that quite clear." Gresham rose. A load seemed to have dropped from his shoulders. "That's white of you, Carroll. I appreciate it." "Not at all. I have no desire to cause annoyance or inconvenience where it is unnecessary. And Miss Rogers told me, with great attention to detail, just why and how it was impossible for your sister to have been anywhere except at home last night." "Evelyn's considerable of a brick, in spite of the fact that she's more or less minus in the upper story. And now, if you're really satisfied, I'll be going." The two men walked to the door together. They were about of a height, Carroll slightly the heavier of the two. "You've no idea as to the identity of the woman in the taxicab, have you, Gresham?" "No. Have you?" "None whatever. though I fancy something ought to develop in the near future. The city is discussing it pretty freely." "The town's wild about it. They don't understand anything. It's tough on my sister. Hazel is only a kid, and I think she was in love with Warren. Well, good day, Carol." He extended a firm hand. "Any time I can be of any help." "Thanks, Gresham." 5 minutes after Gresham's departure, Carroll was in his car, headed for the police station. He turned the case over and over in a keen, analytic mind which had been refreshed by a night of untroubled sleep. There were a good many features about it which puzzled him considerably. While he had not expected that the trail of the mysterious midnight woman would lead to the fiancé of the dead man, the sudden dissipation of that as a clue rather threw him off his balance. He had reached the end of a trail almost before setting foot upon it. Thus far he had refused to allow himself to be worried by the strangest feature of the case, the appearance of the dead body in a taxicab which, according to its driver's story, could not have been other than empty. It was always easy to explain the disappearance of a person from an automobile, but he figured it was patently impossible to enter one without the driver's knowledge. He reached headquarters and closeted himself with Leverage. They plunged at once into a discussion of that phase of the case. "There are only two things which could have happened," said the chief of police slowly. "One is that someone croaked that bird Warren and shoved him into the cab while the woman was riding in it. The other is that he slipped into the cab and she killed him. While I ain't jumping on no set ideas, I have a hunch that the last one is right." "Why?" "Because the other, that idea of putting a dead body into a cab without the driver knowing it, it just naturally ain't possible." "Then you are quite convinced, Leverage, that Walters did not know anything about it?" "Now say, Carroll, that's putting it up to me rather strong. But since you're asking, I'm here to say that I believe the kid. Of course it's possible that he was in on the deal, but I'm betting Liberty bonds against Russian rubles that he'd have slipped somewhere if that had been the case. Nobody that's in on a murder deal is going to frame a lie that sticks his bean as close to a noose as Walters would be if he's not telling the truth." "Sounds reasonable, and yet—" "I'm surprised at you suspecting the kid." "I don't suspect him." "But you said—" "We can't overlook anything. That's what I said. It's what I was driving at, anyway. So far, Walters is the only tangible clue we've had to work with. As I told you, the Hazel Gresham trail died a-borning. The kid who came to see me this morning cleared her, and then her brother came along right afterward, red hot over the insinuations against his sister in the papers. As matters stand now, there's nothing to tie to but Spike Walters." "I'm glad you're handling it," said Leverage fervently. "And, as you are, I'm making so bold as to ask what you're going to do next." "A little general inquiring. You can help me on that. For one thing, I want to get hold of every bit of dope I can regarding Warren: who he was, where he came from, what he did, the size of his bank deposits, his business connections, his social life, and especially every morsel of gossip that's ever been circulated about him in connection with women." You think this dame was a society sort?" "Probably. He was undoubtedly going away with her, and a man of his stamp doesn't often elope with a woman of the other type." "True enough. Well, I'll get you what dope I can." "I want it all. I'm afraid this is going to resolve itself into a contest of elimination. The city is buzzing about the case today, and it ought to be pretty easy to get hold of a world of gossip concerning Warren's love affairs, provided